Welcome back. As promised, we're going to talk education savings accounts, and there's a number of bills about ESAs or school or the school choice policy question in general. We had our guest Senator Axtman on back before the legislative session started, talking about, because this was something that a lot of work was done on in the interim, and specifically the concept of education savings accounts, which in my mind I almost see as distinct from school choice. I think school choice can be a part of ESAs, but I think the appeal of ESAs, the benefit of ESAs, is a lot bigger than that. And I say that as somebody who supports school choice. I absolutely. But I mean, I really like the idea of making funds available and giving parents who have some special needs kids the ability to access some additional help or tutoring or whatever they need. Kids that are really excelling in a particular area, and getting them to a camp or getting them to some extra classes to enhance that. I think giving North Dakotans that flexibility, which we could do with ESAs, would be fantastic. But the school choice, as we've seen from our letters to the editor, we have a lot of people who are perceive that as taking funding away from public schools. In fact, we have somebody who believes that on this call, Chad.
Hi,
Uh,
Chad. Yeah, can I comment on that, Rob?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's why I'm here, right? Well, first off, thanks, Rob and Chad, for having me on to discuss this. I'm super excited to let the public know where we're at in terms of all the bills I'm bringing forward, and the potential. But you're spot on. I don't know if you heard on the floor yesterday, even just talking about the amendment on Senate Bill 2400, someone tried to say, well, this isn't really a school choice bill. And that was a dig at the bill. And I'm like, no, you're right. Like, it's not a school choice bill. This is, I coined it an educational opportunities bill because it's so much more than that. And so, in fact, when we worked on the bills over the summer, I actually found we just stopped even calling it school choice. We just called it educational opportunities because it was so much less about choosing one school over the other and so much more about families
Yeah.
choosing an educational
I
opportunity.
mean, making some funds available for tuition if somebody chooses to go to private school, that can be a part of it.
Yep, but
And
that's also an educational opportunity for them.
but it's about a lot of other stuff, and that's what's really, because I really want ESAs as a concept. I want to get the foot in the door, and I want to include all the things that most people agree on, and then we can talk about the controversial stuff. That's my thought. Your bill is Senate Bill 2400.
Correct.
And tell us where that's at. I know it's gotten some
Yeah.
fiscal notes recently. I had one, and then the fiscal note came down quite a bit. Walk us through where that's at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I just actually brought it forward to the Education Division of Appropriations this morning. So the amendment passed on the floor. My committee they wanted to amend not the dollar amounts, but the qualifying percentages. So they moved the 200 to 300% of federal poverty level and the 400 to 500. That amendment did pass on the floor. And then just this morning, the bill as amended was heard in the Appropriations Division. And they mentioned they probably would not take action on it until Monday or Tuesday.
So, Senator, you're going to be shocked by the things that I'm going to bring up here. So I think one of the interesting things about ESAs is I think that there is universal acceptance of the concept of ESAs, but the controversy comes with who gets the money and how that can be spent. So I'm going to talk about two different things that I don't like about your bill, and I'd like you to respond to those things. And then I'd like to dive deeper into the fiscal note if we have time as well. But so the one thing is, obviously, that I strongly disagree with money being able to be used for private schools. And the reason I disagree with that simply that public dollars shouldn't be used for private school tuition. But in addition, all the other things we're talking about in terms of things that can be used by the ESA are things that are in addition to what the government is already funding. Private school tuition is replacing something the government is already funding, right? So we're paying for a K through 12 public school. And if I'm a public school parent, you're giving me money so I can pay for things outside of that public school. But the private school tuition piece literally is something that we're already funding. So we're paying for that twice. So that's one piece. The second piece, you mentioned that there's the change in the means testing on the private school side. That does not. The private school and public school students are not treated the same. So somebody who's low income and sends their kids to private schools gets more money than somebody who's going to a public school and is low income. I don't think that's fair. I think every student should be treated the same way, if it's just $1,000 across the board or the means testing. And the reason I bring this up is I got an email last week from a former principal at the state's largest private school, who basically said, in the Catholic system in Bismarck, if a Catholic student wants to go to the Catholic school, the Catholic Church finds the money for them to be able to go to that school. So we're not really subsidizing that low-income private school student. We're subsidizing that school instead. Whereas if I'm a public school parent and I'm at 200% of poverty and my kid has disabilities and all these other things, I'm not getting subsidized by the school to pay for those things. So why private school tuition, and why not treat everybody equally? Because I think those are two fundamental flaws in the policy, which overall isn't terrible if those two things were removed.
That was a lot, Chad. So
Yeah, I understand. But I also just said, Senator, just so you know, I
Yeah.
know how these podcasts work. It might never get back to me to ask another question.
Yeah.
So I need to get all my stuff in.
you can call me anytime, Chad, to ask this question. But
I feel attacked by that, Chad. I feel attacked.
so, okay, I don't even know where to start with all of that.
Private school tuition, and why not treat everybody fairly?
Okay, we don't ever treat everybody fairly in any I mean, we have income tax level differences. We have differences there. Where the differences in the tiered for the private school, the non-public school students really came from raising the families that are at those income levels up, because they don't have a fair shot right now at affording a private school tuition if they feel that that is the best learning environment for their kid. So if you're making $62,000 as a family of four, I don't know how right now you afford two kids if you feel like the non-public education provides a better learning environment.
Well, Senator, can I just jump in with one
Yeah.
thing? But how about the fact that the school
Yeah.
is covering those expenses right now? And even if you go to Light of Christ's website, it says that pretty clearly. If you're Catholic, we'll make sure that you can go.
Absolutely, Chad. That's not every school. So that's one. And how long can we continue to do that? If everyone felt like that was the best learning environment, do they have the funds to continue to do that? No, obviously, the donations of the church are going to run out at some point. So
Is that
that's on the
is that because my
Yeah.
my niece and nephew went to Catholic school in Minot, and I don't think that
It
was
is
the
not
case.
correct. Yeah. So not every private school does.
Yeah, I don't know that that's a universal thing even among the Catholic schools.
It's not. And that can't be continued forever. If every student said, I can't afford that. And some of the schools don't means test if it's, for that. And so the policies range so widely across our non-public schools. Some don't take any tuition assistance. Some do. And when, you think about that, there's a lot of other schools that have range in tuitions as well. So that's where the tiered came from, is looking at those income thresholds and finding, is that the best environment? I'd like to kind of talk a little bit, Chad, about one point you brought up is that the $1,000 for the public school supplements and enhances what they're getting, but the other is just a trade out. I see your point, Chad, but I also have seen something different. So I have my older child is a little reserved and hesitant and self-conscious at times. And her now going to a religious school has opened her up. She has relied so much on the faith aspect that she has gained in school to an extent well beyond what my husband and I have taught her. And that has really allowed her to gain confidence in herself through that, to then now learn better and have confidence in her education. So I think for some kids, there's other aspects in a certain non-public. Let's look at a school in Fargo, Full Circle. That school, you can't tell me that doesn't provide educational opportunities outside that the public school can offer right now. So I think we can't just say that that's a direct substitute, because there are sometimes things that are happening different in the non-public schools that do offer different educational opportunities. So I don't think it's just a direct wipeout of what they would be getting one for one.
So your bill specifically, I know, and the House did something. They ended up passing a bill, and I think Chad and I kind of agree that the House bill that is passed is more about the House having a vehicle than maybe them being satisfied with that end product. But I kind of feel like your bill is the vehicle for this whole issue right now. It's really kind of the one that I'm paying the most attention to. As it's been amended, kind of describe, what does it do right now? I mean, what are things?
Absolutely.
What does
Yep.
it make available for North Dakotans right now?
Okay, let's talk about it. Thanks, Val. Okay, so the Senate Bill 2400 provides an educational savings account, which we'll refer to probably as ESA, as we have and will continue to, just to make it easier. The fund would be run through the Department of Public Instruction, and it would provide every single student in North Dakota an opportunity to have access to funds to be utilized through, you may have heard it, families could maybe hear it as a digital wallet or a digital marketplace, an ESA marketplace. So let's talk about the tiers that would kind of show what each student would qualify for. So the bill 2400 breaks it down into 3-tiered systems. So the first tier would be every public school student in the state. No qualifiers there. So every public school student, their family would have $1,000 per student. They'd log on to, it's similar to like Amazon. It's a very nice user-friendly marketplace where they could filter out what they feel is their most needed educational opportunity for their kid, whether that be speech therapy, dyslexia services, a STEM camp in the summer. Let's say they're a rural community. The cost of dual credit is very high and it's really well used in our rural students. They could cover the cost of that. If their school doesn't offer French class, they could take even a college accredited course and use the funds for that. They could use high quality online tutoring. They could use in-place tutoring. So very wide range of educational opportunity expenses that would be qualified on the marketplace. So $1,000, tier 1, every student. Tier 2 would be those students who choose to get their education at a participating non-public school. So the school would have to agree to participate in the program. At that point, the student would receive funds based on the family's percentage of federal poverty level. As the bill stands right now with the amendment, the first tier in this second tier would be families within 300% of federal poverty level would receive $4,000 per student. And then families within 500% of federal poverty level would receive $2,500 per student. And then those above the 500 would receive $1,000 per student. Those could be used for tuition or for any other educational expense that's listed on the marketplace. There's a caveat in there, and I kind of thought through this one back and forth a lot. And originally, my original bill had it where it was tied to the school, but now the accountability feature built into that is if its parent does choose to use the funds towards tuition at a non-public participating school, that student would be required to follow North Dakota statute regarding the state assessments as well for a level of accountability. Third tier would be all of our home educated students, and they would be able to receive $1,000 to be used to enhance their home education journey, whether that be if they need additional speech therapy or a language course that the parent doesn't feel qualified to teach, they could use that as well, but also on the marketplace. I will say we've heard a lot of debate on from home educated families. Some say, I want nothing to do with that. However, I've also received a lot that say that would be great. It would help us cover that expense. But I do want to make sure that everyone is clear. In Senate Bill 2400, for home educated families that opt in to receive the money, it just links to the current statute. So it does not require to do them anything additional. If they are currently following the law per century code, they would be able to opt in and qualify for the funds.
Senator, let's talk
Yeah.
a little bit about the cost of the program.
Sure.
When this bill was introduced and went through the policy committee, there was not a fiscal note, which I don't know if that's normal, but I don't think that's ideal. But it did. So there was a fiscal note that came out 2 days ago that basically looked at 100% participation in all these programs. And that fiscal note was $158 million for 1 year. So about 320 over a biennium for cost to continue beyond this biennium. The new fiscal note's $105 million, which would mean 210 for those keep doing math at home for the second biennium. It makes some really, really silly assumptions, in my opinion. I mean, we just said earlier that, if a family is under that poverty level, that in order to go to a private school, they would need the subsidy from the state. But yet the fiscal note says only 50% of people will use it. I think we've seen in other states where we lowball the fiscal note and then it ends up costing way more moving forward. I actually joked to Rob yesterday, I've never seen a fiscal note try to pass a bill. Usually it's fiscal notes to kill a bill. But, I think the truth is probably somewhere in between 158 and 105 million. I don't think 100% is going to use it, but I also don't think it's between 50 and 70% as the new fiscal note.
Can
How
I
would
on that clear that up, Chad?
Yep, and then I
Only
wanna follow up.
10% would be in those tiers. So it does account for so the second tier of the program, we're at 100, we used 100% in that fiscal note. So 100% would utilize the funds in tier 2. It's just 50% would be in those buckets of the 300 and 500%. But you are correct that tier 1 and tier 3 are at 70% take up and utilization rates.
Okay, so let's even say the 105 is correct. That's the equivalent for a full biennium of a 7% increase in public school funding, because 1 is about $30 million.
Mhm.
The idea that I would come into the legislature and ask for a 7 and a 7, or with the original fiscal note, a 10 and a 10, we would get laughed out of the Capitol, right? And so why would there be money for this sort of new big government program to do this stuff when we haven't been willing to invest that in public schools in the past? Because the governor, I think, had $44 million per biennium in his budget, and this is twice as much on the lower end for just 1 year.
Yeah, I agree, Chad. The fiscal note's big. However, I will say, I've done a lot of research on the national data coming out that our GDP impact from COVID and learning loss is in the billions of dollars. And so I think an investment in each individual student is timely. Now, sure, could we put it into the formula? We could. However, that's not investing in each individual student. And I would argue that the impact for each individual student, I know you're,
No,
yes, your
I
answer,
just disagree with that. I mean, I think
yeah,
if we add more teachers and more support staff and all that kind of stuff, I think it is helpful for certainly my student. I mean, I walk into a school every day and see the successes he's having.
I wonder.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rob.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Senator, but I wonder. I mean, I don't know that to me, it's just two different types of doing education spend. I mean, one way we could certainly put it in the schools, and we have wonderful educators. My wife's a teacher. My kids go to the Minot Public Schools. I'm very happy with the Minot Public Schools. I think they do a great job, and I want to see those people come. But this is another way to help you. I mean, you say put in place more support staff. Well, I don't know if I have $1,000 available for my kid to get him a tutor, that's support staff. And it's very tailored, very specific support staff for my child and my family. So I don't know. That's the way I look
Yeah.
at it.
And Rob, it's at a less cost to the school, right? Because if we ask the school to hire a tutor one-on-one with each student, can you imagine how much we'd have to put in? So I actually think
It is hard because they have to measure how many students are going to need the person. It's hard. It's hard to budget. This stuff.
Listen, guys, I've talked to a lot of parents who have to bring their kids to behavioral health and others tutors and that kind of stuff. That $1,000 has dropped in the bucket. And again, if we're funding, we have to think about public schools as a community good, right? And by pooling all those resources to provide these services to all students, including those who maybe don't have parents who can get them to behavioral health, to get them to extra help and those kind of things. My brother's a principal and was a principal at a school in South Bismarck. They would set up the appointments for behavioral health and other things. But if the parents had to bring them there, they would never get there. Now, think about if that behavioral health specialist was in the school and being able to provide that for everybody. I understand we have a different perspective on this, but to just sort of say, oh, everybody's going to handle this the same way and it's going to be great for every individual student, I think is a little naive. And I think the fiscal note says as much. I mean, because you're not saying 100% usage of this.
Yep. Yes, absolutely not 100% because you're thinking there's two things that lead into the 70 is take up rates and utilization. So, are they going to max out the 1,000? So now a little less will even apply. And then a lot will probably only use 7 or 8. How do they ensure they maximize it? Will they use every dollar? So I think that's a two-part into the 70% there. I think, Chad, that's just going to be something I fundamentally believe different than you is that I think this is a very effective way to directly impact a child's outcomes.
I guess a term that I use a lot is that there's many paths, right? There's many paths to prosperity. There's many paths to success and happiness in your life. And I think with education, there's many paths. And the K through 12 system is a path, and it's a great path. But the thing is it can tend to be monolithic, and there's other paths too. And I guess I really like the idea of enabling some other paths. And also, I sometimes get frustrated when we say, well, not all parents are going to avail themselves of this. Not all parents are going to make maybe the best choices for their kids. We can't legislate good parents. We can't. That's a cultural thing that we're going to have to.
Hold on. The legislature's trying, though, with fundamental rights and all those stuff.
We spent the whole first part of this show talking about how much we disagree with the legislature trying to do some of those things.
Understand.
I think so. And so, I mean, those are problems I think that really do need to be fixed in our civic groups and our churches and our families. That's there. But I don't want to hold back the good parents who are going to make, who I think are most of them, almost all of them. I don't want to hold them back. And I don't think that's what Chad's advocating. Is there an element? I mean, obviously the school choice bill is a friction here, and I'm asking you probably an unfair question because you're passionate about the school choice part getting through. And I don't want you're going to say, well, you're asking me to negotiate against myself. But I mean, is there a point at which a willingness to set the school choice part aside and just focus on the ESA parts, if that's what it takes to get this through?
Question, if that's what it takes, I don't think that's what it takes. You saw a full only school choice bill just pass the House with incredibly high amounts. The president's executive order on educational opportunities made it clear school choice is not, it's here. We need a framework that approaches it smartly with high accountability. And I want to have the legislature have a hand in crafting that accountability. I think 2400 does that in a very smart way. So I think the time is now. So sure, in the last moment, if that's what it takes, I think it is critical. We do have a framework in place, which this ESA would do. But I also think the time is now for the school choice piece of it as well.
That was a really interesting part when the House was debating their bills. And it was something that I hadn't considered is the federal component, where we have an administration right now that's coming down with this, and they're saying we need to get out in front of this. So we have Chad shaking his head. So maybe.
Well, I mean, I just think it's adorable to think about if Joe Biden had done this 2 years ago, if the legislature would be standing up and saying, "Oh, the president said this is going to happen, so therefore we better pass a law." I mean, it's.
I would have, Chad. I would have.
It is silly.
I think if Joe Biden had started pushing school choice, I would hope.
Or Rob, anything else. I mean, I've never heard the legislature stand up and say,
I have.
"Look, the president
on regulatory
Okay.
things, they say something's coming down the pipe from the federal government, and we need to get in place the state. For instance, like coal, or where we regulate like coal lands and stuff, where we say if we don't do it, the feds are going to do it for us. That happens.
But can I just tell you how I think this could play out, though, with this framework? So what I think we're hearing is the changes to the federal level will really impact formula funds. So anyone unfamiliar with that, let's pick out like IDEA funds, for example. I think that's where we're going to see the major change and why this framework is so critical. So if a student who calls for IDEA funds opts out of the public school system, they just say goodbye to their IDEA funds unless they find programs that's willing to collaborate with each other. However, I think we're going to see where now those IDEA funds come directly to the student rather than the school. So when we have schools that are already doing it, such as Full Circle in North Dakota, I'm so excited to have a framework that works with the changes in the federal government and allows those families to choose a different option for those students for high need services. And so I think that's where we're going to see some really exciting changes. We didn't even talk about the other side of school choice today, which we have 5 minutes if you want to, but
no, I don't want to leave this one yet, Senator.
Okay, the charter school side as well was also, charter schools was also in the executive order. And I think it's really imperative that we have a framework to tailor exactly how we want charter schools to come in and operate in North Dakota as well. So I think the executive order had a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're ready to have a framework in place. But I think I see it playing out really with those formula funds, such as like 501, Title I, IDEA funds.
So I think we should have the senator back on to talk just about charters, because I actually think that charters are something people don't understand. I
True.
think even people in the state who work on education.
I don't know that I understand them.
Exactly right. So let's make that happen. But before we leave this one, I do have a question for you. And one of the things we talked about earlier is that private schools will help subsidize tuition of students. And one of the ways they're able to do that is the legislature passed a pretty significant tax credit for people donating to those funds. So if I give $100,000, I get a $25,000 tax credit. I think it works. If this ESA goes through and we're giving, again, public dollars to parents to pay for tuition, would you support closing that loophole? Because now you're sort of, the state's paying for it twice now. Because I think one of the reasons that tax credit passed and groups like mine didn't fight against it was this will allow the church or the private schools to help subsidize low-income people. But if this ESA does it, why do we still need that tax credit?
Chad, that's I wouldn't say right away, no.
Yeah.
Because as you know, the cost to educate is much higher than $4,000. This isn't covering the full cost to educate. And those donations could go to other things that the church needs as well. And so maybe sure if the program goes and we see how it goes in the future and we can increase the $4,000 to cover the cost of education and those dollars make more sense through this framework than that framework, absolutely. But I don't think shutting the door on that day one is a smart decision either until we know what cost to educate and what utilization looks like and how those two worlds work together. So
why I think we should take the money raised for athletic facilities at private schools and put that into tuition for poor kids.
Boy, you're singing my song. I would get athletics out of the public schools. I'd get them out of the public universities. Anyway, I'm not going to go on.
Unless it's the Yankees and Dodgers, you're just anti-sports, aren't
Hey,
you?
those are private. Those are private. But by the way, I'm against taxpayer subsidies for billionaire owners to build stadiums so their millionaire athletes can play. No thanks. As much as I love the Yankees, no thanks. Don't, Chad. You got me. You got me all distracted. I wanted to ask an important question to the senator. All right. Oh, you're actually going to let me ask the question. Right.
Well,
I'm going to make fun of you first, but go ahead and ask your question.
And then maybe we can get into the Larks versus, the Hot Tots rivalry someday, Rob.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we absolutely should. I wanted to ask real quick about the marketplace because one, I mean, obviously, I think that's the crux. This bill accomplishes nothing if the money doesn't end up benefiting students and all the myriad and very customized ways that it could. So tell me about this marketplace. Like, okay, I have $1,000 or whatever tier that I'm falling into, and I have this money available and I want to get a tutor or something. What does that process look like for me? I mean, do I just have $1,000 in my bank account or what do I do?
Yeah, the marketplace companies, first off, they are growing rapidly. They're innovating rapidly. They're meeting the demands of families. So there's, I would say, 3 ones that have been on the circuit a little bit longer that are really well established. But then there's a couple new ones that are winning the procurement processes in other states pretty rapidly as well. So I think even the marketplace world is quickly growing, expanding, meeting needs.
So what is it? Is it like the state of North Dakota has a marketplace and then companies like apply to participate?
No. Well, I shouldn't say no right off the bat, but usually no. So a few states have hired a ton of FTEs within their departments to run it. Most states contract with these third-party entities. I'll give you a couple like Odyssey, Class Wallet. Those are a couple names if you want to look up on their websites. It's pretty cool. You can kind of step through what the parent profile would look like. But so let's talk about that. So if I'm a mom, I've got 2 kids, and so I log on and I apply to the program. So I type in my kids' information. These programs quickly verify with the systems. They partner with Department of Public Instruction to verify that your kid is enrolled in a school. And then usually within 12 to 48 hours, that's what they guarantee, the money would then be, whatever you qualify for, would be uploaded into your account. Once you see what your balance is in your account, it's like a online shopping center. So there's little check boxes that you could say, I'm interested in STEM camps, coding camps. I'm interested in tutoring services for math. I'm interested in dyslexia services. I'm interested in dual credit courses. So you would select those. Then there's 2 features of it. Once you hit search, it would show options that are within a radius you select, so like a 50-mile radius if you want ones that are tailored in person, tailored to your local area, or there's the virtual side of it. So then it'd say, here's the ones that are also available, high quality virtual. So you can see anything that applies to that.
So it existing, so like my kids have gone to the STEM, like a computer camp that's put on by Minot State University. They put it on in the summer. We send our kids there. Potentially that's something that would have like existing
that
programs
could
like
be
that
on there. Yes. So the way it works is in the spin up phase, which is why this wouldn't I'm not going to rush the spin up phase. So whoever the procurement process would select, they come to the table with, here's some high quality things we've already researched and scrutinized. We recommend these. Then also they work with the community to have open periods where you, Rob, could say, hey, we love this science center and their camps. You type that in there, or in the online open period, the company that we would go with would research that, scrutinize it, see if it's a valuable thing, and then provide a recommendation to the Department of Public Instruction, who then has to say yes or no to every item before it's on there. So it is very highly scrutinized, but the backside company does all the research on those things. And then there's always an option for a parent request in there as well. If there's something that's not on there that the parent found that could be utilized better, company does the research, recommends approval or denial on there. And then you just have the balance that you can see things being used.
That sounds very
Rob, we're not going to cut off because I thought of another question. And since we
Oh.
have Senator Axman here, one of the things that came up this morning at appropriations was the fact that school meals were included. And
Yeah.
there seemed to be some consternation from members of the committee around the fact that that's included, and therefore the usage rate would be a lot higher. Do you see the appropriations seem to indicate they're not going to kick that out? That's not their job. But
Yeah.
do you see that as being something that maybe would be negotiated out and be a
I
separate
do.
conversation?
Yeah, I think, and I do think the conversation is worthy, and I hope the House, when we didn't really debate that very heavily because we did debate a lot of the major policy things in the Senate side. So I hope that discussion is had on the House side. I think there's pros and cons to having it in there, and I do hope that is heavily debated. So
because we have
And
we have independent school lunch bills too that
right, yeah,
you know,
we don't
I
know
mean,
where there was going to go.
maybe there's an opportunity to do them all together. I guess I don't
Yeah,
know.
I just hope they don't cut it out just because of concern about usage rate, right? I mean, if that's what one parent wants to do with their $1,000 versus, maybe these other things don't apply. I think if you're going to do this, you want to make sure the usage rate is high, even though these things are expensive, right? And so if we're going to do it, we need to make sure everybody gets treated in a way that they can use it.
In chat, I actually don't see the usage rate as like the negative to having it in there. I think, to me, the negative having it in there is, I would hate for a student who could really benefit from some tutoring is a parent saying, well, it takes me an hour to research all these tutoring things that are available on the marketplace, but it takes me 2 minutes to send it to my kid's lunch account. And then they never go get the tutoring that could have been beneficial. So that is maybe the negative I see to it. But I do see all the positives, which is why I put it in there.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I mean, $1,000 in my pocket is $1,000 in my pocket. It doesn't matter if it's covering lunch or tutoring, right? Because I'm still going to have to pay $1,000.
But they may not go get the tutoring otherwise.
I would hate, and maybe a struggling family's already covered, although you can start to struggle on a very quick timeline that maybe doesn't
Absolutely.
qualify you. I would hate to put families in a position of choosing between tutoring and lunch. I don't know that we would, but we're over time. Senator, thank you for your time. I really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Senator.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day. And you let me know when you want to talk charter schools.
Well, we'll have that conversation for sure.
Sounds good. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you.